This is Ravens Flock Talk Podcast, coming to you every week with their thoughts and opinions on each and every Ravens game. Tune in weekly and join the flock.
This is Ravens Flock Talk. I am your host, Brandon, and my dad joins me as my other host. This is our reaction to the divisional round against the Buffalo Bills and our season finale, last episode of the season, unfortunately. And I just want to start off by saying, as we mentioned before, we are a fortunate fan base. It's just the way we lose is what hurts. And I'm sure, Dad, you will agree with this, is I rather just get blown out and walk away from the game saying, you know what, they were just the better team outright. But when you time and time again, year in, year out, see the team that you love shoot themselves in the foot, and then still have a chance in the game because of how talented we are, and you drop a routine catch, that's just why it hurts. And we were hopeful this year, but man, what a back and forth game and a roller coaster game. And with the slightest hope, the Ravens the Ravens did crush our hopes and dreams this year. But we'll get into it. But I think everybody in the fan base is really feeling the same way, and that's why it took us a few days to record this episode.
Yeah, in summary, I'm still in shock, Brandon. We were so pumped up for this game, had so much high expectations, and this one really hurt for all the reasons you just stated. Not sticking to the game plan, having the weapons that you didn't have last year, but still coming up short.
Yeah.
And that's what really hurts me, and we'll get into it, like you said. But just the overall reaction of disappointment when you know that you were the better team and you should have won this game. It wasn't going to be a blowout, but it wasn't supposed to be like this where we shot ourselves in the foot.
And how many times, to your point, where we say we were the better team, and then you turn on the television and all the analysts say that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it hurts so much, and let's just be honest. Now we are chokers. As a Ravens fan, you want to refrain from saying that, especially when you got opposing fans of teams like the Steelers and Bengals or whoever, right? That make fun of Ravens fans for that, and you want to refrain from admitting that. But games like that, it's hard for me to turn a blind eye, honestly, because we have the most Pro Bowlers in all of the league, 9, and we didn't even make it to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, and to your point, especially in the playoffs, how can we deny that we cannot come up in the big moments with these other premier teams? If you can't say you're a premier team when you can't perform in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's just unexcusable to me. In third time going, and we'll get into the details of it, but just overall thinking about the fan base and the analysts even, we just can't seem to get over the hump in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a good segue to talk about the most important player, Lamar, because that's been tied to his name, right? He chokes, he can't perform in the playoffs, and it has been a struggle with him, You look at his stats, it's night and day from regular season to the playoffs. However, this game, he struggled in the first half. That first drive, as I've always heard former coaches say, is really scripted. The first 10, 15 plays, what you're going to call, and then after that, teams kind of adjust to the game. So he looked immaculate, right? And then that first interception happened, and you go, oh no, don't crumble. And he picked it up. And years prior, he probably wouldn't have, right? He probably would just a steady decline ever since that first interception, but he didn't. And he gave us a shot. So to his credit, he pulled it back together. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't exclude him from criticism. Right. He did play bad, right? We can't have an interception. That fumble, I don't know what happened. The ball just fell out of his hands.
Slipped out of his hands.
So I'm not excluding him, but I'm not going to tear him down completely and say, it was just outright horrible, because he made some big throws still.
So I want to take a couple steps back. before the game, Brandon and I were talking, what's the most important factors of this game, do we think? And I was saying turnovers. I said in a game like this, especially in the playoffs, it always really comes down to turnovers and following your game plans, sticking to your identity. That was my theme going into the game. Brandon mentioned to me his big thing was coming out with momentum. First drive, he wanted the ball. I didn't. I wanted it out of halftime. But Brandon was telling me, hey, I want to set the tone.
Especially as an away team.
An away team. You're away. I want to set the tone. Silence the crowd.
All that.
And I said, well, that's important, but we'll see. And I actually thought it was more important to come have the ball out of halftime in case you don't have the lead. But sure enough, first drive, they come out shooting. I mean, it was something to behold, right? And the unfortunate part is when the Bills got the ball, they did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, another thing with Lamar, it was he tries to do too much and we turn him into Superman. Before the game, all I heard was if the Bills want to win this game, if they're going to have a shot in this game, Josh Allen has to be Superman. Now, why would they say that? Well, because we have a better roster. The Bills don't have as good of a roster, right? And so Josh needs to do that. In fact, though, their game plan was what we should have done with Lamar, making the game simple for him. In a cold weather, and you're away, the crowd's intense, Lamar's throwing it 20, 30-plus yards down the field. Josh Allen, 95% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage, it seemed like, So, me and my dad, we look at it as like, why get Henry if you're still going to be airing it out down the field? Now, some of those he completed, but you're increasing the risk for a mistake. And as I said, when Lamar tries to do too much, the turning point of the game that really should have ended the game and never gave us a shot, but it's a bad snap, and he's got to tip it to himself, and the play's already botched. He tries to elude a rusher, and then the ball just comes out. Instead of just taking the sack and realizing I got third down after this anyway, I can pick up just some yards because it's going to be a loss of God knows how long of a sack. But maybe I can get some yardage and have enough for Tucker in field goal range.
Everybody says every game, we're so used to Lamar being Houdini. Yeah. And I think in his head, he feels the same way because he makes such spectacular plays. But, in the playoffs and in those conditions, that was the whole thing.
And being away.
This seems so simple to me, to the analysts on TV. Had to listen to that all day before the game. That, hey, with the weather conditions like they are, I can't imagine them not running 30 times, 40 times.
Rex Ryan said that last year.
Yeah, last year. And both teams, both Bills and Ravens. And they expected this to be a Josh running day it's
a good segue into coaching because a lot of fans I've seen online were going, it's not coaching, it was turnovers. Coaches, they're not responsible for Lamar dropping it or Mark Andrews on fumble later in the game, which is true. However, when you look at how we play in the regular season and Todd Monken gives you confidence that he learned from last year, right? That he learned that, the game plan in the first half of the Houston game was not it, and we come out in the second half running and we advance. And you think he's going to do that against Kansas City. The same thing, deja vu this year with Pittsburgh. What, 300 yards rushing? Mm-hmm. And there's a stat that keeps getting thrown around because they got analytics for everything. When Henry gets at least 20 touches, we are undefeated. Yeah. Undefeated.
I'm just totally speechless.
And he doesn't. He doesn't get it.
I am totally speechless on this.
So to us, really quick, that's coaching. This loss is on coaching. I get the turnovers, but it's just inexcusable.
That's exactly what I was going to say. In podcast after podcast, we have no faith in Todd Monken. None. We say this every time, and every time he sticks to the game plan, if we looked at the stats, we win. We win, and he did this again. I think it's a slap in the face to the fans.
It is. It's a wasted season.
You did this last year. I thought, what does it take, Todd? What does it take? You did this. You got demolished with the analysts last year. Nobody could believe it. The fans couldn't believe it. And you do the same thing the next year when you have a better running back. It just befuddles me why he is so stubborn with this and why he doesn't learn. I mean, what else can fans? What can you say? How can you justify this? And I don't want them putting this on Lamar because, excuse me, if
not all on him.
No, of course he made that fumble, and the interception didn't hurt us. Turnovers, like I said in the beginning, that's the key. But if you stuck to your game plan, you minimize these turnovers. You minimize the chance of having turnovers. If you're doing the run game in this climate, in this environment.
He's just stubborn, and there's multiple points in this game that I can back up with our statement on why it's coaching. In the third quarter, we're gashing him with the run. Henry Hill. There was only one pass, which ironically was to Mark Andrews. But at the end, Henry scores a touchdown. You got a 2-point conversion to tie the game up. Run it again. You did it the whole drive, and he passes it. It just didn't make any sense to me. And not one of the two-point conversion attempts, not one of them was a run play. Not one.
I know.
Not one. And how many times have we seen this team not convert a 2-point conversion?
Right.
It goes back years. I remember we lost against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And Mark Andrews dropped it. Now, granted, it was a little bit out of his reach, but I had no confidence that they were going to convert that.
And I'll go a step further with Bateman. When he caught the long pass, he's on the 2 to 3 yard line.
And we settled for 3.
And we
could not punch it in.
Yep.
And you were saying during the game, say it.
I said when that happened, I said give it to Henry 4 times. You have 4 chances with the premier running back we have to get 2 yards. And we started going backwards.
And if you're on the 1 yard line on 4th and 1, go for that. Yeah. That's your 4th attempt.
Yeah.
I mean,
what is so, and don't and
what's
nothing,
so difficult,
and nothing,
Todd?
And Todd, and nothing tricky, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
Go right up the gut, go in the gap, and
at that point, it's smash mouth football, which is the type of football that Ravens always played.
Yeah, and you were pushing them around at that point. You were pushing them around. And again, we can't emphasize enough about the snow, the rain, the cold, the climate. This is what you do. Yeah. So it just, how can you justify passing the ball like that in the red zone as many times as he did? The experience that we had in the past, in the playoffs, when you have to be somewhat, the word isn't conservative, but it's like, stick to your identity, and podcast after podcast, that is what we have said, and we have no trust in Todd to keep to the game plan.
I listened to a guy named John Middlecoff, a former Eagles scout when Andy Reid was the coach, and he actually reposted a story of me replying to what he said because I agreed with it 100%, and he reposted it. And I listen to this guy all the time, so shout out to him. And he said it to a T. He doesn't understand why in the playoffs the Ravens, need to prove that Lamar can throw the ball.
Yep.
He just doesn't understand. Win an ugly game, right? He said going into this game, the game plan should have been at 50 runs. Yeah. Boring or not, 50 runs. Even fans online, I was reading comments were saying, I have screenshots of it. And the sad thing is that he goes, we have the Shaquille O'Neal of running backs. Dominant, unstoppable. How many times throughout the year, Dad, do they say, keep giving it to him? He's going to eventually break it out. He's a second half runner. And the last thing I'll say is this was the most damning to me that hurt the most is he said, since John's brother's in the league, if that was Jim Harbaugh, granted, they got blown out by Houston and whatnot, but if that was Jim Harbaugh, he would have lived and died by running it. Yeah, they would have ran it every chance they could get, and they would have won the game. Yeah, if he had this
Belichick
talent.
did that for years, stuck to his game plan. He knew his personnel, and I knew in the first quarter when Henry dropped the ball, and then when he had his first 3 to 4 runs, and he didn't make more than 5 yards, that Todd was going to abandon the run. I just knew it.
Well, he showed it in the first half because we had a lot of second and longs, right? And he went right to the pass. Yeah. Instead of running it again and making it a 3rd and 5, and then throw it. He abandoned it right from the jump on the first drive.
And isn't our identity Lamar running as well, so that they don't know
there was no RPO. There was nothing.
We didn't do any of that.
Nothing.
Like we did all year. All year we did RPOs. And that's what kept them off guard, we had them on their heels, and we didn't do any of that. All this was passing.
Yeah.
In this element, passing the ball 30 yards, really?
Some of the guys I listened to, like I mentioned, John Middlecoff, they said basically like it seemed like that first drive when Lamar is throwing it left and right was the kiss of death for later in the game because they were like, oh, we're just going to keep doing this. Meanwhile, Buffalo is game planning
and dunking the ball with
how
Josh.
We should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, how could you be pass happy when your number one receiver is not playing in the game?
Yeah.
You would think they would, reel it back some, and instead they wanted to throw it more.
And I'll go a step further with Josh. Everybody knows the times I have watched him when it's in the red zone or a critical play and it's 3rd and short.
Or fourth.
Or fourth.
Which happened this game.
Yep. Who's going to have the ball in their hands and who is going to run the ball?
Yeah.
And he did it just like clockwork. And I'm saying, you mean to tell me with the amount of film that is out there on Josh, that our defense, I'll talk a little bit about the defense, that you weren't prepared for that in the red zone?
Yeah.
It was crazy. The only play I remember in the red zone was when he was there, I think, on the 4 or 5 yard line. And they went backwards. I think Matabuke tackled him on that play when they should have done like their little famous tush push and ran it down our throats. And I was so happy that didn't happen. That they went away. That was the only time they went away from their identity.
Yeah, I will say, to go against what you said a little bit, I will credit the defense in that they kept us within the game because Bills had multiple chances to ice this game, but because we stopped them late in the game and they had to settle for 3, we were still within 8 points, right? If they score a touchdown right there, it's game over. Exactly. It doesn't matter if you score.
Yeah, I'm just talking couple plays here.
I think what you're honing in on is in the beginning of the game because when we scored, right, they had a 4th and 2 and they converted to extend that drive.
Yeah.
To talk about momentum right there, if they don't get that and we get the ball back, right, on the 3rd and long, Brandon Stevens gets beat to extend that drive. They were going to have to punt the ball right there back to us. If we go up 14 or 10-0, this is a completely different ball game.
That was a killer.
But it was those moments the defense just needed to step up, and just to make one play.
And when that happened, I just said, oh, Lord, I saw Brandon Stevens in the middle of the field. I'm like, oh, no. And sure enough, and then we got a few bad calls at the end, pass interference on White. That was a momentum killer too.
That to me, that was a BS call.
Yeah,
it was 3rd down.
I agree.
Coleman extends his arms, pushes us down, and we get the call. And that turned into a touchdown. That was when Lamar turned it over. Yeah. Just think if we're like, oh, we escaped because they only settled for 3.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
That was huge. And, the concerning things, and this is why I say it starts from the top down with John Harbaugh. Since 2018, 3-6 in the playoffs, average 18.4 points per game. The opponent has averaged 19.2 points per game. That shows you how close these playoff games are. And we've turned the ball over 16 times and only have 3 takeaways. Yeah. It's inexcusable. Yeah. It's inexcusable.
And those stats tell you exactly how we play in the playoffs. I mean, it doesn't lie. Stats don't lie. And a lot of that, the one that sticks out to me is the turnovers again. I mean, you just can't win like that.
You cannot.
You cannot win.
And let's get into, I know we're 19 minutes in, but let's talk about the play that everybody, talked about. So I want to say this first. In the moment, of course, my reaction, we were all just outraged and irate. It brought us flashbacks of Lee Evans, the amount of heartbreaking, crushing defeats in the playoffs. Just last year, Zay Flowers fumbling in at the 1, right? And fans criticized him and got on him, and we were the ones to back him up, because he's a rookie. And without him, we never would have gotten that far. So I want to first say some of the comments I've seen towards Mark Andrews is disgusting. As a Ravens fan, I'm ashamed of our own fan base.
Yes.
Talking about we're going to take his insulin away. They're attacking his girlfriend. She had to, I think, disable comments or her account because it got to be too much. This is the day and age that we're living in where you have access to athletes, whereas back in the day you didn't.
Yeah.
And they can see what you say, So I want to say that I'm very disappointed with the fan base in terms of that, okay? I get he dropped it, but come on, guys, Now, should he have caught it? Yes, and it hurts. And it sucks that, again, I said this, it's like deja vu. It sucks that it was Zay last year. It sucks that it's Mark Andrews this year.
Yeah.
But do I want this guy on the team next year? Hell yes.
Yeah.
I get it. If we let him go or he's traded or whatever, it's $11 million in cap space that we save. But John Harbaugh is entering his final year of his contract. A lot of the pieces are still coming back. Unlike last year where we kind of seemed like we were decimated, a lot of the pieces are still coming back. And I said this last year, I think it's going to be like a last hurrah the following year. And now I'm saying it again, but due to the contract situation, this is the last hurrah. And I'd rather have him as an asset because if we just have Likely and he gets hurt, who do you got? So I get it. He should have caught it. I don't know how he didn't catch it. He had the fumble that he had earlier that quarter killed us. Really did, and we still had a chance because of the defense. But Mark had to play better. He really did, and it's disappointing. His performance in the playoffs has been bad, but I still want this guy back on the team next year.
I agree, and I just feel bad for the man because in that kind of a moment, you go from hero to zero.
Yeah.
And he was having a up and down game. This was his redemption catch, and to be honest with you, Brandon, I just wanted to see what happened in overtime.
Yeah.
To see, what happened. And the sad part for me losing to the Bills is that we don't get a chance to see what we could have done to Kansas
City.
A rematch of Kansas City.
Yeah.
And as a football fan, I think across the country they wanted to see that. Kind of a rematch. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. But let's stop this. And as the players would say, before the game, after the game, in the locker room, it's a team sport.
Yeah.
And there's blame to go around for a number of turnovers, including Lamar, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, the quarterback gets the blame for the most of the time, and he would admit it, and he'll take it. But everybody had a little piece of that blame because maybe it shouldn't come down to one last final catch.
I think only, as they love to say, casuals will highlight just that play. But when you watch the whole game, there was a multitude of mistakes as well as coaching mistakes.
But you got to think that I'm proud of the team for this reason, Brandon, is in that moment with the ball in Lamar's hands on that last drive, and he has to score, 98 yards or wherever the heck it was. I mean, to come down, we didn't think we had a chance, right? And the only chance was getting a touchdown and getting a 2-point conversion. It was our only hope to just to tie the game.
Yeah.
And and it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
But in that way, still, like I said to you, I'm in shock that we lost. I'm still digesting it.
I am too, and a lot of people, are like, I see this. It was like a minute 33 left. And they were like, the game would have been over. Buffalo would have scored. Well, hold on a second. If Andrews catches that ball, anything can happen. Any given Sunday.
Especially this overtime, whoever gets the ball
a bad
first.
snap, a turnover, maybe they throw it every time and the clock's not running and we get chance, or maybe they miss a field goal. Anything could have happened.
Or we win the coin toss and score and we win.
Anything,
walk off the field.
Exactly. Anything could have happened after that. And the fact of the matter is, we were gaining momentum in the second half. Yeah. Every Bills fan in that stadium was sweating bullets because we were gaining ground while they were, it seemed like falling apart, So anything could have happened. But it was just another year where these memories are now etched in your mind. From Lee Evans to Cundiff to Zay to now Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Brandon, I totally agree. And I can't get out of my mind the Lee Evans drop. And I also can't get out of my mind, for me, it was the coaching part last year where they didn't run the ball. And I said, no, with Derrick Henry, there's no way Todd is going to do that.
Yeah.
But every podcast, we kept saying, is he going to run? Is he going to use Henry on third downs?
We were hesitant really all year.
All year.
Even the times we gave him credit, because in the back of our mind, in a big game, we know.
Yeah.
We know. And we said, and to me, I was more hopeful than you. I was more optimistic than you. I thought he learned last year. I said, there's no way.
I know.
No way.
But just think about how
he would do
I
it
hate to
again.
harp on this, and I know a lot of the podcast has been with Todd, which it should be, in my opinion, because as you said earlier, Houston, first half, pass. Second half, that was the formula. And what does he do? The most important game against Kansas City, the premier team, passes it.
And now
he does the same thing.
You could argue, both defenses, their secondary is to be, a bit questioned.
Exposed.
But Steelers, you could argue are a better defense than Buffalo, right? I don't think Buffalo, they don't have a player like TJ Watt on defense.
Especially a run defense.
So, as Baltimore, my mentality was going to be, what we're going to do, and we're going to still do it, and we're going to achieve our goal. No matter what, we're going to live and die by this.
And even in the Pittsburgh game, it took Henry a while to get going. But that is his bio. That is he's better in the third and fourth quarter.
And the fact that Lamar didn't run just makes no sense.
Yeah. Who wants to tackle Henry in the third and fourth quarter when everybody is tired? He seems like he just kept going. If we as casual fans can see this, how can they not see it and on film? And how dare you, Todd, slap the fans and slap your players in the face like that?
Second year.
For a second time.
It's funny. Last year at halftime, John gets questioned. What's the game plan? Because we look flat. He goes, we're going to run the ball more. And then we have 6 carries at the end of the game by our running backs. Yeah. This game, he gets questioned at halftime because Lamar had a shaky first half. Did you say anything to your quarterback? John's response, no.
Right.
You're the head coach. What is this guy here for, guys? Because I just don't understand. What is his specialty? Can you talk? I can't imagine different sport, but Phil Jackson not talking to his best player, Kobe or Michael, who's struggling. This guy, is he just a body there?
Yeah, the fact that he's, I
couldn't believe he said no.
We couldn't believe on national TV, coming out of halftime, this man has the nerve to say he's not saying a word to his quarterback. Oh my gosh. Who does that? And even in companies, even in businesses, you're going to go up to your CEO and he's going to say, I just left it up to Dan.
Even though he's not Andy Reid and calling the plays, can you imagine Andy Reid saying, I didn't talk to Mahomes?
Yeah. Or Bill Belichick or the premier coaches in the league now.
It's stuff like that where it's still 50-50 with Ravens fans, the people that want him gone and want him to stay, but the people that want him to stay, it's stuff like that. I say to you, I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
How many times are we going to lose the same way? How many times do I got to look at my coach when they show him, and he doesn't look confident during the game? There was a moment in the game he looked defeated going into halftime.
You even said that. And how many passes are we going to give these guys? Both
I know.
Of them. How many passes, guys?
How can he go unscathed, no blame at all, year in, year out, and we lose the same exact way, and he's been here the longest out of everybody.
And the fan base keep on Lamar. Come on.
That's another thing.
What? Okay, an scapegoat? Is that what we have come to as a Raven?
Why is John untouchable like he won 5 rings? And let's just be honest. He's got one lucky ring.
Yeah,
we had no business winning in Denver in 2012. None. But we did. So to me, really quick, it's no difference to me. Pittsburgh. They're running the same thing with Tomlin, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. He cannot win in the playoffs now. We're expecting the same thing with John Harbaugh to go to a Super Bowl, and we lose the exact same way, shooting ourselves in the foot. Ravens versus Ravens. Yeah. To me, it's no difference. The only difference is that we have a better team than Pittsburgh. We have better talent. Yeah. But that, to me, looks worse. It looks worse.
They always say you have to make a change somewhere. Something has to change to get a different dynamic or something, because it's not working. And, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to pivot to Zay Flowers. I got to say, I was the biggest fan of him, biggest advocate of this guy. But I, for the life of me, can't understand.
Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. But Dad, you were on the topic of Zay Flowers.
Yeah, in the most critical game that he's playing in and has a chance to redeem himself from last year, granted, I see that he had the injury, but there was a leaked video of him working out,
No, it
And
wasn't leaked. It was actually posted,
well,
by the
posted.
Ravens.
That's right. That's
by
right.
The Ravens
I apologize. You're
themselves.
absolutely
Yeah.
right. You showed it to me. It was posted. He looked like he had come along quite a ways. And I just have to think, Brandon, back in the day with the Ray Lewis days and how they played so hurt with that defense. Ray Lewis played with one arm tackling people in the playoffs. I can't imagine Ray not playing in this game under any circumstance. And even if Zay was only, I would say 60%, I would have been out there. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a football player, but in this, you just couldn't say keep me out of the game. There would be no way, and we really needed him, even if he was a decoy.
Yeah, it's always touchy mentioning injuries, right? When you don't have the injury or have never experienced it or don't feel the pain that player's feeling. But it was concerning, and it was disappointing too, because we were healthy all year long. But, it is what it is. I thought that he would have wanted to redeem himself after last year, and I know he did. But, I put up a poll on our story. I said, would this video piss you off if he didn't play? And 65 to 70% of people said yes.
I just had a thought. I actually saw him on a post interview about this, and the reporter said, did you feel bad about not being able to play? And he was so casual and cavalier about going about it. Yeah, well, I couldn't do it. They asked him, would you think you'd be ready for the Kansas City game if we had that opportunity? Yeah, I think pretty much, maybe. I mean, where was the intensity, Zay? Yeah. Where was the intensity? Say, I wouldn't miss it. I would work. I would be there. I mean, that's what I wanted to hear, even if it didn't come to fruition, even if it wasn't true. But that casual, like, oh my gosh, we got you as our premier receiver. Where's the passion? Where's the fire? I mean, you're in Baltimore, buddy. Yeah. You're not in Jacksonville. You're in Baltimore, and we play hurt. We play hurt. Not we. They play hurt, and fans are used to that.
The only thing I'll say too, the last thing I'll say is what really was a slap in the face is watching the game before and watching how involved Saquon was. The pass, the run, and like you said to me, Dad, you don't even know who the backup running back is, right? Because he never gets in the game. And, I look at Derrick Henry, and those two were 1 and 2 all year long. But the difference in the usage in big games now, we both played 2 playoff games, was night and day, in my opinion, mainly due to this Buffalo game. But it is what it is, another year wasted. And we'll see what happens, but that's really all I have to say regarding this season and this game. It just really stinks. At the end of the day, there's nothing else you could say. We didn't, as they love to say, execute. Didn't make the plays, and all year long we were good with holding on to the ball, and every mistake possible outside of kicking came in this game. It just all started crumbling down, and we still had a chance, and they could not capitalize off of it.
Showing you the talent that we had on this year in this game. It's so very disappointing, as you said, and you don't get second chances in life, and you have to seize opportunities, and that's what I feel sad about with Mark Andrews, because he's got to live with this. We can talk about it, but he has to live with this disappointment, and hopefully he gets over it. He's with the team. And psychologically, he's fine, Yeah. Because sometimes these plays like this end a career because you can't get over it mentally, Yeah. And I know for a fact, I remember him. Brandon, you have a photographic memory for sports. I'm going to give you credit for that. I do not, but I do know the Lee Evans drop, the Cundiff miss. These are moments you just never forget as a fan.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing left to be said.
Or the Lamar fumble that just slips out of his hand, which was a critical piece of us losing the game. So
yeah, a lot of moments in playoffs recently. I think of the Buffalo pick six, and that guy is running by himself down the field. I think of Tyler Huntley fumbling it, the Bengals going the opposite end, one guy alone in this game after Lamar fumbles. It's just etched in memory now. But hey, All we can do is root for them, and they have to figure it out at the end of the day. So it's on them. But season 4 is wrapped up. Not the way we wanted to. Since we started this podcast, my goal has been to, document every game, report on every game, and have them win the Super Bowl. And these last 2 years, I felt the most confident, and I'm not sure. I will say to the people that support us, we took this loss pretty hard, and it's tough coming in and week out saying the same things. Todd Monken, or even players. At one point, it was Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, Brandon Stevens all year long, right? Yeah. You find yourself, saying, I said this before, right? And you're on record saying it, right? You can just go back and listen. And it's taken its toll, and it's made us question, could this possibly be it for the podcast? I don't know. We don't know. We'll have to take this off season and discuss. And, whether we are leaving or coming back, there will be a post made for everybody to know coming into next year. But, it sucks. And a lot of people keep going. You've built something here, and we have a community now of really strong supporters. I'm always involved with the people in our DMs on our page that constantly are talking about Ravens to me. Constantly. Mm-hmm. I recognize their profile photo. I recognize their name now. So, it would suck to walk away from it, but I think people will understand too, because it's depleting. It really is. But nevertheless, that didn't change the fact, win or loss, that it's fun coming here and talking to my pops about it. That's why I started this, and I convinced him to do it. But this was a very fun season, and the season where we grow the most. Yeah, all our platforms, cumulative over 1 million views for a small channel like us. So it's been a very positive season in that regard.
Yeah, my summary of the year, I always start out with thanking the fan base as well. It's nothing. We're nothing without you. Brandon and I wear our emotions on our sleeves when it comes to these podcasts. We're so into it. People don't understand. You have to really invest in this every game to do a podcast. Brandon is the engine that makes the car work. I always say thank you, Brandon. He does a great job. He controls everything, and I just kind of sit back and watch him do his magic when he starts posting short clips and what he does, and he's very good at it. So I want to thank you, son. It's always been fun doing this with you. It's a dream come true, and I'm glad I committed to it. But it is tough. This, I think, is the toughest year. And you never know year to year what your situation is going to be in life. Yeah. And we'll see. We'll think it over and see how life is a year from now, less than a year from now. Yeah. On our next podcast. So, hey.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, we have been blessed with the fact that we report on a team that is good. I can't imagine doing this being a Browns fan or Jags fan. So in that regard, it's a bit easier. But, to have such optimism and hope that this is going to be the year, and they fall short by killing themselves in the foot with mistakes, can take its toll. But this was a very fun year. This was actually, I would say, season 4 of our podcast outdid last year. This was the most fun I had doing it, and the interaction this year, it just skyrocketed for us, honestly. But
I had fun, less stats, Brandon, and just looking at the game and analyzing it on that aspect. And like you said, with Lamar, it's always a fun game to watch.
True.
When you have the best quarterback in the league, how can you not watch it and have fun watching it? The wins are great, the losses are hard to take. But as you said earlier, it's a lot of work. So, but I'm having fun, and I thank you again for kidnap me into this podcast. So
it was fun. It was fun. So that wraps up season 4 of Ravens Flock Talk and the 2024 Baltimore Ravens. Again, one last time, we appreciate everybody that's tuned in, that viewed one time or all throughout the season, commented, we appreciate it. That's what, has kept us going, and we will update you down the line on what we, choose to do going forward. But nevertheless, from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you, and I thank you, Dad, for I wouldn't want to do this with anybody else, So if you said that's it, I just,
Appreciate it. And I thank the Ravens players for making it fun.
Yeah.
And watching them. They're a piece of it. The fans are a piece of it. The whole 9 yards. So thank you as well.
Thank you. So, we love you guys, and go Ravens.